Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello, I'm Jamie Lane, and welcome to the latest edition of the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined today by a really exciting guest, Henry Washington, a real estate investor, podcaster, and now author. Henry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This is super cool. I really enjoy getting to talk to you again.
Yeah, so one really exciting, and host one of my favorite podcasts on the market, was a guest there. I have had Dave, your co-host, on the podcast. Really one of my favorite shows. I try not to miss it any week that you guys have a show.
That's what we want to hear, man. No, they've they've done such a great job, like coming up with this show from the concept to the casting. Like my podmates feel like family to me, and it makes for a great dynamic because we talk about what some people would call boring stuff, right? We're talking about the economy, but how it relates to actual investors and what you should or shouldn't be paying attention to. It's such a needed show. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language right now, and I host a podcast about data in the short-term rental space. You can't get
Yes.
niche or my wife's like, "Who would ever listen to your podcast?" Like, you'd
Data nerds like me. Yeah.
yeah, you'd be surprised, sweetie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe and let's maybe step back for those of the listeners that don't know you, don't know your story. How did you first get involved in real estate, and what's your sort of background in the space?
Yeah, bought my first house in 2017, and I really bought that house be out of necessity, essentially. My life took the traditional path. My parents wanted me to get good grades, go to college, get a good job, work up the corporate ladder, save for retirement, that kind of thing. And so I was on that path, and I had a really good job. I mean, I was in data analytics for Walmart. Like, it's one of the largest companies in the world. Like, if you're a big data nerd, like, that's a good place to be. And so, but I made great money, but I didn't have any financial education, so I wasn't saving any of it. And there's this thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to kind of building wealth. So there's people who kind of come from nothing,
Mhm.
right? And then they build themselves up, right? And so they understand, the value of working hard and earning everything that you need to get to where you want to be. But like, there's a whole demographic of people who were raised like me, where I was raised middle class, what you might even call upper middle class, right? And so I just had exposure to a comfortable life. And so when it was time for me to go out on my own, it came with almost or not almost, it was this sense of entitlement. Like, I deserved these things that I never really had to work for because my parents were able to provide them for me. And so what that did was it caused me to overspend because I wanted the same comfortable lifestyle that I was accustomed to, but I didn't put in the work that my parents had put in to build that lifestyle. And so I would overspend so that I could have it. And that started to take a toll on my credit. And that started to take a toll on my marriage. We tried to buy a house together, my wife and I, when we first got married. And the lender called me and said, "Hey, if you want your wife to be able to buy a house, you can't be on the loan. You're hurting our chances of being able to be a homeowner." And I was the breadwinner. I wanted to be this provider, and I was realizing that I can't do that. And so then, like, the more conversations we would have about money or the future, the more scared I would get because I you want to talk about a dream home when you get married, like, I couldn't afford the house we were in, right? We want to talk about vacations we can go on. I didn't know how to pay for any of those. Kids are expensive. So I just was starting to, like, do the math, and I was like, how am I going to be able to provide the life that I feel like my family deserves? And all of that led me to a panic attack at 3 in the morning, a legitimate panic attack, because I was just worried that I can't provide and she's going to leave me at some point, right? Like, your brain just kind of starts playing tricks on you. And that led me to a Google search at 3 in the morning about how to make extra money because my solve was, if I can figure out how to make more money, then I'll be okay. And through that search, I just kept seeing articles and YouTube videos about investing in real estate and all the benefits it provides you in terms of income and cash flow. And, like, and I was just, I don't know, something about real estate was comforting to me. And it was like just a calming presence of it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna figure this out because I was like, all these people all over the world, just regular people, have been buying real estate and changing their financial lives. Like, I gotta be able to do it too. So at 3 in the morning, I decided I was gonna be a real estate investor and woke up in the morning and told my wife, and she was like, "All right, well, that you okay." Right? Like, sure. And, yeah, man. And so, 90 days after that panic attack, I bought my first house.
And I'm sure it was just sunshine and rainbows after that,
It
right?
was yeah, easy peasy, walk in the park, nah, no big deal, man. Absolutely. Yeah, it was,
I mean, that sort of short synopsis makes it sound easy, but I'm sure it wasn't. So, like, I know for a lot of people going from 0 to 1 is
yeah,
that first big step, right? And it can be the step for starting to build equity, which can then fund the other assets that you go to buy and sort of help you build credit. Like, so how did you go from having 0, having not saved for years, and to actually be able to and become a real estate investor?
yeah. My first deal was like this incredible lesson on like the power of real estate and like how to invest in real estate. It was kind of like the best class I could have taken on learning how to invest in real estate. And all of it, there's a lot of lessons in the story, but essentially, I think what gets in people's way is we want to know how we're going to do something before we decide that we're going to do something. And life really works in the opposite way. Life works where you make a decision that you're going to do something, and then the how reveals itself because you've turned your brain on to the concept that you're going to go do it. And so your brain starts helping you figure out or see things that were already there that you weren't noticing, right? Like the second you buy a new car, you start seeing that car everywhere all over the road. There's no more of them now that you bought it than there was yesterday, but your brain is now just picking up on them, right? And so
Yeah.
that's how we do things as people, but we don't realize that that's how we need to approach doing new things. And so, fortunately enough for me, is I didn't know anything. Like, and I think that that helped me because I didn't know anything. When I would hear something, maybe like a no or an obstacle, like I was so green, I didn't realize that that was probably something I shouldn't do. Like I had no clue, so I was just going to keep going. So kind of the way it worked was after I woke up that morning, said I'm going to be an investor, I was like, I don't know how to do this. So let me go talk to somebody who does. And I had a friend at work who was a commercial real estate broker. And so I went to her and I was like, hey, I'm going to invest in real estate. Like, can you just like point me in a direction? Like, I don't even know what direction I need to be pointed in. And she was like, yes. And she brought me a box of books and she was like, I will help you, but you have to show me you want to do this. So read one of these books. And if you read one, then I'll help you. And so, like, I'm shuffling through this box and I'm like looking for any title that might sound familiar. I didn't know any of these books, right? And so I'm like, I think I've heard of this one. And so I grab what book?
I know, Rich
Yeah,
Dad Poor Dad.
absolutely, right? Yeah, right. Like, and but it was pure coincidence. Like, I had no clue how cool of a book it was. I knew nothing about it. I was like, I think I've heard this title. I read it, and then my head explodes like everybody else, right? And so I read that. And then she was like, "Well, just you gotta find some people who are doing this and get around them." And so I started going to every meetup I could, and that helped me form relationships with other real estate investors who really just wanted to help me. And then I just started telling everybody that I was a real estate investor. And I just did that because that's just how the world works, in my opinion. Like, if you want something, you have to put it out there. And then if you put it out there, then the world gives you back the things that come with that. Like, if you're butthead every day, then you wondered why you're surrounded by people who are assholes, right? Like, this is how the world works, right? Like, so I was like, I'll just tell people I'm an investor, and then maybe I'll get some of the things that investors get. And that led me to my first deal. My buddy heard that I was buying houses through people at work because we work together. And he called me and he was like, hey, are you buying houses? And I was like, yes, I am. He was like, dude, I have to sell my house.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. He was like, yeah, I got to sell it in 30 days because I'm buying this house. He was very involved in his church, and they were building this campus anyway. But he was like, I got to buy this piece of land for my church. I need this amount of money to do it. So I have to sell my house to get the money to go buy this. And I have a deadline. And so if you can buy my house in 30 days, I'll sell it to you for 116 because that gives me the amount of cash I need. It's probably worth 165, 175. I don't even care. Just as long as you can close in 30 days, you can have it for 116. Can you buy it? And I was like, yeah, I can buy it.
No problem.
I had $1,000 in my savings account. That's all the money I had saved up, and I had bad credit still, right? And so like I had none of the things that would make you think saying yes to buying a house in 30 days is a good idea, but I just wasn't going to stop until someone who could actually stop me did that. And so I was like, sure, I'll buy it. I didn't know how to buy it. He was like, okay, well, what do we do? And I was like, hold on. And I like went to my desk and Googled how to buy a house without an agent, found out you needed to sign a contract, downloaded the contract off the internet, took it to him. We signed this contract at the office. And then I was like, all right, so I got to go figure out how to get some money because I didn't have any of that. And so house was 116,000. I had 1,000 in my savings account, so I needed 115,000. I went to the bank that was closest to my office because I was like, that's just easy place to go. I'll ask them if they can help me with a loan. And when I walked in, it was a small local bank that I went to. I did it by accident. It wasn't like I was insightful enough to know that they could be beneficial to me. And I asked the person in the lobby if they could help me, and that person happened to be the commercial loan officer. And so he took me back into his office and he started telling me, well, he looked up the house and saw how good of a deal it was. And he was like, dude, we would love to lend on this house. Like, you just got to come with the 15% down payment. It was going to end up being about 15 grand. And he was like, do you have the 15 grand? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. I did not. Right. But, he was like, he was all about it. He hadn't ran my credit or anything. And he was like, yeah, we want this. Here's how we can do it. Right. And so, I walked out of there and I now only needed 15 grand, right? So, in a matter of a couple hours, I had, 85% of the funding I needed to buy this deal, which was amazing to me. And so I went back to that network of investors and said, hey, I have a deal. How the heck do you guys find the money? And one of the investors sat down and brainstormed with me. And long story short, he helped me come up with he helped me realize I could borrow against a 401k and borrow your own money out of your 401k, pay yourself back with interest. But if you rent the place out, technically your tenants are paying you back with interest. And so I was like, man, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. But I didn't have a 401k either. So I went to my wife and asked her, could we borrow it from her? She said, yes. We borrowed it. We bought the house. And then the banker called me and said, you should take out a line of credit on the equity. And I was like, all right. And he explained that process to me. And basically he said, look, when you bring us deals like this, they're low risk investments for us. So we want to fund these because you're not into the house for more than it's worth. And so since it's low risk for us, we'd like you to bring us more. And then you can use this line of credit on this property as your down payment going forward. So we'll fund 85%. You can take the 15% down payment from this line of credit. It's no money out of your pocket. We get to finance a great deal. That's low risk for us. You get to buy a property with no money out of your pocket, right? And so he was like schooling me essentially on how to leverage local banks to buy properties. And then he was like, and then you can, once you rent these properties out, you can either refinance them and you can pay back your line of credit and pay off your loan and you'll have a new 30-year fixed loan. Or if you're doing a flip, then you just sell the flip and you pay off your line of credit. So you can really rinse and repeat this. And so like at that time, he was essentially giving me a lesson in what the Burr method was. And I don't even know if there was a cool name for it at that point. But so that first deal really helped show me how real estate worked, and how you can go about leveraging different types of financing to take deals down. And once I figured that out, I was like, all right, well, I know how to get the money. I just got to figure out how to get deals. And so I just started to go all in on learning how to generate leads and find deals.
One, that's amazing, and such a great story on, like, how to sort of and get that first deal,
Yeah.
and sort of 3 things really resonated with me there. One, there's, like, this concept of, like, expanding your surface area of luck by, like, telling so many people that you're an investor, like, that someone might be able to come to you and, like, help you sort of get that first deal done. Like, I see that sort of resonating in so many different ways. 2, like, and just calling yourself a real estate investor, like, when I first started as an analyst, this was, like, 15 years ago, one day I just decided that I was gonna be an economist, and so I just, like, started calling myself an economist, And people were like, or my roommate was like, "Can you just do that?" Because he was studying for a law degree and like he had to like go to school for years. And like I had an undergrad degree in economics, but I was like, yeah, and I'm an economist now. Like that is my persona. That
Certified.
yeah, that is everything. And like I'm an economist now. And that's what I sort of built towards. And but same thing, like just start calling yourself that and like carrying yourself in that way. Like that's all you're thinking about. And over time, like you just sort of own that persona, right?
Absolutely.
And then the other one, and maybe you want to dig into this a bit more, was like around mentors. Because it sounds like at the community bank there, like you found someone that could help you sort of navigate lending, navigate like commercial real estate, and like starting to build like how do you actually be an investor and grow that portfolio and get money to more money to do that. And like I was recently read Scott Galloway's book and he like had a mentor like he walked into his local bank and like the guy taught him how to invest in stocks and like every day like he like talked to the guy and helped him navigate and like not sure if there's a parallel to like and this next version of like Henry of like and where you are now and like and helping mentor and like and others and through the podcast through the book
Yep.
like of being able to invest in real estate and sort of take their 0 to 1 step. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what was next in your journey and sort of what that's led to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, after doing that first deal and realizing, okay, now I have money, my only barrier and also how amazing that deal was. You got to remember 90 days before that I had a panic attack about money. And then like all of a sudden now I own a house that's paying for itself. It's paying me cash flow and it is paying and I have access to this line of credit with like 15 or with like 25 grand on it. Like that's amazing when you were panicking about money 90 days before. And so I was like, all right, I need to learn how to go do more deals right now. And I said, I've got money, so I've got to go figure out how to get deals. And so I just was researching like who in the real estate investment world is great at finding deals, right? And the answer was typically wholesalers. And so I started to study wholesalers, not because I wanted to wholesale real estate. I don't really wholesale real estate very often at all. I just wanted to learn how they were finding their deals. And then that way I could generate the deals for myself and then buy them, right? Because I had the funds. And so I started to learn all about direct to seller marketing and how to talk to sellers. And I just kind of implemented those practices in my business to generate leads. And once I had the lead flow coming in, you really have solved the two problems that most investors face. At some point, if you're in real estate investor, you're either gonna say the problem I have is I can't find deals to buy at a discount, or I can't find money to buy the deals that I can find. Right? Those are the two big problems. And once I solved those problems, it was more the next hurdle wasn't how do I do this? The next hurdle was like how much do I want to take on? Like, how fast do I want to grow? Once you solve those two problems, you can grow and scale your business at whatever pace you're comfortable growing. And so we started to go. We went fast. We did about 30 deals in our first year. And, got up to like, it took me 3 years to get up to like almost 70 units. And then now we're sitting at somewhere like 130.
It makes it seem so easy.
Yeah, no, definitely not easy. Like it's not a matter of it being easy or not. It's just a matter of like I wasn't going to stop until I was successful because that's what I told myself. And so one of the best things that I did or I decided to do was that I wasn't going to let anyone tell me no until they had the authority to really stop me. And I don't think that we approach problems like that as people very often. We try things, right? And then when you try and you fail, you give up on it. And when you make a decision to be successful, that's a different concept. And so I would just like that first deal, I had no business, like from a common sense perspective, like I didn't have any business telling him I could buy his house in 30 days, right? I didn't have if any normal person would be like, man, I only got $1,000 in my savings account. Like I don't have enough money to buy this house. Or, I have a sub 600 credit score. Like who's going to give me a loan to buy this house? I can't help you. But I just said yes until I absolutely couldn't do the deal, and I just never got stopped. We often as people will make decisions for other people about our wealth, and that just seems crazy to me. The amount of people that I talk to and say, "Well, haven't what's stopping you from doing a deal?" And they go, "Oh, I just my debt to income ratio is not where it needs to be for me to get a loan." Well, did you talk to a bank? Did the bank tell you that? Well, no, I just, my credit's just not where it needs to be. Well, did you apply for a loan and find that out? Did you talk to more than one bank? Because sometimes just one bank, you just may not be a fit for them, but there's the thousands upon thousands of banks. Like you can just call another one. Like and people, but they've just decided that like they don't have what they need, and you really don't know that. And so I just wasn't gonna stop until someone who really truly could stop me would do it. And I think if you approach more problems like that, you turn your brain on to helping you figure out how to get around roadblocks and over roadblocks and through roadblocks, then it's just more helpful for you to be successful.
So, and again, like I love hearing this sort of progression. And I was looking at your LinkedIn and before we were recording, and it looked like you stopped working at Walmart around April 2020. We all know what happened in April 2020, March 2020. So what did the decision process look like to sort of quit your full-time job? And I assuming that was sort of an inflection point to going all in, and maybe you were already all in on real estate investing at that point.
Yeah, what happened there was, I got an opportunity to work for an apartment syndication fund, and so I left Walmart to go take a W-2 job at this apartment syndication fund as an asset manager for them. So I was helping them manage so I was managing the property managers that were managing the apartment buildings, right? So this company would syndicate funds and buy apartment buildings all over the country. So I was responsible for like build apartment communities in 3 different states. And so my job was to make sure that the property managers that were on site managing the properties were actually doing the things that they needed to do to make sure the properties were operating effectively so that people could get their returns. And so I was like, man, I left Walmart to go there because I was like, what a great opportunity for me to learn commercial real estate while, investing myself. Like that was a no-brainer for me. I took a pay cut to go take that job. And I learned a ton, and so I was there for about a year, but yes, so they let it at Walmart, they sent us home right around the time that I put in my 2 weeks notice,
Uh-huh.
so I was like, I put in my 2 weeks notice, and then they sent us all home, and nobody came back, so it was weird leaving the company because I was like, I'm already at home, like, it was
Yeah.
like the weirdest, like, exit I've ever had, uh and so then I worked for this apartment syndication fund, in the height of COVID, which was, also crazy. I did that for a year, and so, I left probably April 2021 is when I left that job, and so kinda how it all came about was like, I liked what I was doing. I didn't want to leave, but, they knew I was an investor. That's part of the reason they hired me, and so they it just got to a point where they were like, "Hey, I know you're doing this stuff on the side, and we need you to put more time into what you're doing here." And so they were needing me to work some extra hours and put in some extra time, and I that was the first time that I, like, had to do the math to figure out, like, if I give you more hours, what does that cost me? Because I can't spend that hours in my other business, and when I did that math, I realized it was costing me money to have my job because I made more money per hour outside of my job. And so I just what I told them. I said, "Look, I wanna help you, but it literally is gonna cost me money, and I don't think that that's the right thing to do." And so we just mutually agreed to part ways, and it was, I'm still friends with those people and appreciate that opportunity, but I tell people I didn't quit my job until it cost me money to have a job.
That that's a fun way to part ways, right?
Yeah,
Of
yes.
when it's on your own terms, and it's because and you've created that opportunity that lets you sort of move past it. So where did bigger pockets come in? And we all I was sort of watching on the side. It felt like and bigger pockets really rose to prominence during the recession and the COVID recession and And so many people, I feel like, got into real estate investing for the first time. So many people were sort of moving outside of the core sort of major metros and exploring like new ways of investment. And so how'd you hook up with that team?
Yeah, that was more of about so I was a guest on the podcast, like my first year into the business. Episode 366 was my episode, and not that I'm counting or anything. And through that process, so how I got on the show was I met Brandon at the first Bigger Pockets conference they had in Nashville. I met him there because I screwed up my travel and showed up an entire day before the event started. Like I just had the wrong dates.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wandering around this hotel, like bored. And like I see this 6 foot, 7-inch guy standing in line for coffee. And I'm like, oh, that's Brandon Turner. So I just go and chit chat with him. And we start talking and I tell him my story and he was like, dude, you should come on the podcast. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like I didn't think he was serious. So I was like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll come on the podcast.
Of course.
Right, right, right. And then sure enough, like after the conference, producer reached out to me and was like, hey man, you should Brandon says he wants to get you on the podcast. Yeah. So I get on the podcast. But while I was there, I just wanted to like my theory on networking isn't about what you can get from other people. Like that's how most people approach networking is how do I need this help, I need money, I need deals, whatever it is. And they go and they're looking for the people who have those things. And then you network and you help each other, right? I look more from the perspective of who can I help? Right? Like if I can go find people that I can be of service to, then people will naturally want to help me, like in a stronger, more effective way because you've got human nature on your side. You want to help those who help you, right? And I want to stand out. Like you're gonna meet all these people, and then when you get home from a networking event, you're like, who was the guy who had they did the lending? You talk to a million people. Like it's hard to remember, but you always remember the person who went out of their way to help you without knowing you at all. And so, through networking there, I had met the producer of the show, didn't realize he was a producer of the show, and was just, chatting it up and was trying to be helpful to him. And then there were some other investors in the Bigger Pockets ecosphere who were buying property in my market. So I connected them to some resources in my market just to be helpful. And so, long story short, when Brandon decided to leave, they were looking to, kind of backfill, and they were like, "Hey, can you come co-host a few episodes until we figure out what we're doing?" And I was like, "Sure." And so once I did that a few times, they just invited me to stay on full time with them, or to stay on as one of as the cast on the market. So it just kind of all happened. But I think it happened that way because I just was always helpful and never really asked for anything in return. Just wanted to be of service.
Yeah. So has that impacted your sort of real estate investing business at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's how I've been able to grow such strong relationships. And like, I mean, I still do it to this day. That's just how I want to cultivate relationships with people. And you just build like very, very strong bonds with people because people don't feel like you're trying to take advantage of them. People feel like, it's the opposite, that they're getting a lot of value out of you. And it just creates these strong relationships. And so, because of that, I have the best real estate agent in Northwest Arkansas, and he works extremely hard for me. And I don't think, and part of it is, yeah, he's just a hard worker naturally, but like he truly cares about me and my business and knows that I will do anything I can to try to help him. And that makes him want to work harder for me and better for me. And so all of my relationships within my business have more of a sense of family tied to them because people genuinely care because they know I'll bend over backwards to help them.
As a Bigger Pockets host, naturally, you've written a book. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, that's what I have.
so, how did that book come about?
Yeah, uh, their publishing team approached me and said, we would like you to write a book. Do you want to do that? And I was like, me? are you are you sure?
But
And
I was in IT at Walmart
right,
before I
right.
got started here.
I'm just a giant dork, but sure, yeah. So my theory on writing the book was I had to do it because if you think about it, there are people who want to write books for a living, and the process they have to go through is grueling. They have to come up with an idea and then pitch that idea to a publisher. And it's this long process, and not all of them get to actually do it. And just because I bought a house one time, now I'm somebody's offering me the opportunity to do it, like, it felt irresponsible to say no. And so, of course, I said yes, but I said I wanted the thing that I wanted to write on was the thing that, I had talked about with my first deal. I said the thing that's helped me the best or the most as an investor was learning how to solve the problems of being able to find really good deals and being able to find the money for the deals. Like, those are the obstacles that people see as their obstacles, like, because they're the hardest, like, mentally to overcome, right? If you can't find deals to buy at a discount and it's uncomfortable, it's hard to do that, right? Then people just don't get started because they realize, man, finding the deals is hard. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to do this, right? Unless I can find something on the MLS super easy, I'm not going to buy property, right? And the same thing, that people, see money as the hurdle. They go, man, so I can't find, I don't have the money to do the deal, so I'm just not going to do it. And so once I've figured out how to solve those problems, then that's what I told them. Like, if I can teach that in a book, I'm all for it, right? And so that's what I got to write about.
So, and this is the STR Data Lab. We got to talk about data. So, when you're finding deals, like, what are the data points you're looking at? Like, what sort of flashes green and your eyes as like a deal or a market that you're going to go after?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about, if you think about what finding a deal is, it's essentially you're looking for someone who has equity in their home and motivation, a reason to sell at a discount. One of those things from a data perspective is easy to find, right? You can go find data and statistics on equity, right? It's out there. It's hard to find data and statistics on motivation, right? Because that's a sentiment, right? You have to relay that motivation to something that's actually a hard data point and then look for that hard data point, right? And so, how we do that in real estate is we look for things that might indicate that somebody is motivated and use those data points. And so, what we would look for is, we're looking for age, right? Because if the older someone gets, the less able they may be to take care of a property, right? And so then distress comes into play, right? So age is an indicator of potential distress. Distress is an indicator of motivation, right? So we would use age as a data point. We would use you can look at being upside down in a loan, or being as some level of motivation, right? So foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, right? And so really what you're looking for is data points that are tied to stress for people, and then you can search for those data points. And still, you're still shooting. You're still, it's still kind of a shotgun approach. You still have to reach out to all these people, and not all of them are really going to have distress or really care about the distress that they're in. So but you just use those as indicators, and then you look. So I started off using age as a big indicator, and a lot of investors were using. One of the other data points people would look at is where they live, right? And so essentially what they're saying is, if you don't live where the property is, then you may have some motivation to want to get rid of it if it's a problem property, right? And so everybody was mailing or calling absentee owners. And so what my data brain did when I was looking through all of these ways is I went, okay, what are all of the data points people are looking for to indicate distress, and reaching out to them? And I kept seeing that that was the common denominator. And then my data brain was like, great, then I don't want to do that, because there's more people doing that. And I'm new. I don't want to compete with people with all this experience, because, my piece of mail may not stack up to how cool theirs is. And my messaging may not be as great because I don't know good messaging yet. And so I went the route that I saw the least amount of people were doing.
How much overlap then do you see between your old Wall Street or Walmart sort of data analyst and sort of new Henry Washington real estate investor? Are you like sitting the spreadsheets all day, like
Yeah.
matrix style? And
No, no, I'm not, man. So I'm probably an anomaly in the data analytics world, meaning that, like, I'm an extroverted people person who just likes technology. And
okay,
I like technology. I ended up in lots of technology roles, and it made me a great manager of data analysts. Because to be a manager, you got to manage people, right? And most data analysts just want to mess with data. They don't want to manage a team. Like it's just not their thing. It also made me, it kind of gave me a different element. And so now that I have my own business, I have other people who keep all those spreadsheets and things up for me, and I can take a look at them. But I don't find joy in like building them out or anything like that anymore. But I definitely know how to look at things and tell a story, or look at things and read the story it's telling me, versus a lot of people will look at things and try to make up a story, but that's not how data works. Like the story is the story, bro. Like that's what it says. Don't be mad at me that you like the report, right? Like
Yeah. And so I'm sure and you talk about it all the time, like the market that we're in right now for housing investment is a tough one, right?
yeah.
Affordability's and not in a great spot. And you've got housing values all-time highs. How does that work for motivation though? Because like when I
Mhm.
was asking about the metrics, you didn't talk about home values, you didn't talk about incomes, and motivation of potential sellers is it correlated? And is it a better time for people to be motivated, a worse time? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. If you think about why people sell homes, very little of it is related to finances, or making financial investments. So they're not thinking, most people wanting to sell a home aren't thinking, the market's not a great time to sell right now. Like that's not what they're thinking. Like it's usually some sort of life event.
I got a
Um,
divorce. I need to
yeah,
sell this
yeah,
home.
that is triggering them to sell.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, even on the market right now, it's a great time to look for deals, because sellers do know that this may not be the best real estate market, but they're still listing their homes for sale. So what does that tell you? That probably tells you that there's a need or a really high want for them to want to sell their property right now. So that means you can go out as a buyer and you can, make offers, maybe not at, list price, and maybe ask for concessions, because if the market's not great but people are still selling, there's definitely a reason that they want to do that. So what I'm finding right now is it is a great time to get really good deals because of that situation, because there's not a lot of inventory and the interest rates are high. So sellers, man, if you look at my market, when I look at the data in my market, like people are still selling properties and buying properties at the same pace they were 12 months prior, right? Even though the rates might have been a little bit lower than, like there hasn't been this drop off, even though prices have gone up and interest rates have gone up. And so when I look at local data in my market, like to help guide my business, the things I'm looking for are, what's the list price to sale price ratio, right? Meaning, are people listing properties and then getting what they're asking for, right? Because if they are, like, that's an indication that there's good demand out there. And if they're not, then demand is lower and people are, they're not willing to pay and they're getting concessions. But right now, if you have a good home and you list it at a fair price, it sells like that, right? And the homes that are overpriced, or they're pieces of junk and they're overpriced, those sit on the market longer. And to me, that's a sign of a healthy market. That's how it should be, right?
You shouldn't have to go in with all S offers and like no diligence and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we do look at different data points in order to help keep us informed about what the market is doing, but that isn't affecting us, like how we go find good deals, if that makes any sense. It just lets us know, like, here's what the market, it helps me understand, like, do I need to pay a certain price for this property? Because if I'm underwriting a deal, like how I found that property is still going to be, I'm going to find distress, I'm going to reach out to people with distress, and I'm going to make offers, right? The offer that I make is going to be based on data, because if I know list price to sale price ratio, people are listing homes but they're selling them for 20% less than what they're listing them for, that informs me that my offer probably needs to take a 10 to 20% discount off of what I would originally offer, because people aren't getting the actual ARV, right? So we're using the data to keep the pulse on the market so that we can make offers that make sense.
What are you seeing on the lending front? Like it's been well reported that a lot of community regional banks have been pulling back, especially with commercial real estate. Are you seeing any trouble there getting deals financed? Are there any creative ways that you've been going about it?
Yes. So when we think about local community banks, yes, some are pulling back, especially in the commercial sector, because you've got a lot of those commercial loans coming due now that they were underwritten in 2020 at a 3% interest rate, and now that 5-year balloon is coming, and they got to re-underwrite those at like an 8.5, 9, 10% interest rate, and those deals aren't cash flowing anymore. So what do? They're gonna have to give them back. If they're giving them back, right, those banks are hurting. So those banks who were focused on commercial, you'll start to see, like, you can literally just go talk to them. They'll tell you what they're wanting to do, right? And so, like, those big commercial banks, they want to get more of the deals like I do, the single family, small multifamily. You're buying for less than what it's worth. It's a much safer investment. So some of those big banks are now trying to hedge their portfolio with some of these safer loans. And so I've found it for the asset class that I'm in, it's almost a little easier to get lending right now because I'm in a more safe asset class, and a lot of these banks are trying to get more safer loans under their belt. I think people just really need to learn how banks make their money, and then it will make it a whole lot easier for you to be able to go find money. There are still banks right now who only want to do larger commercial deals. You just have to go find them, and they'll happily fund your deals, right? With these local community banks, they have a bread and butter. They have a product that they like, and if what you're buying is what they like, it's easier to get money. So, yeah, some banks are pulling back, but that hasn't stopped me from getting loans. Like, it's about learning who likes what you do and go and build those relationships.
I love that advice because just talking with the lender, like
Yeah, just
th-
ask
they
them the question. They'll tell you.
they'll tell you what they want because like it's not like they're shutting down. It's not like and most of them are still lending. It's just what they're willing and able to lend on.
They have to lend to stay in business. Small local banks must do loans to local community businesses. They have to, or they go out of business. So you just need to go find out from them. Just go ask them, what are you guys lending on right now? They'll tell you, yeah, we love this. Cool. That's how you know if you can work with them or not.
Well, Henry, I feel like we could talk for hours.
Good. Yeah.
uh, but we must wrap up. Can you let people know where to find you? Name of the book, where to find it, all those fun things.
Name of the book's called Real Estate Deal Maker. First half of the book teaches you all the ways you can get really good at finding good deals because that's the number one problem investors face. The second half of the book teaches you all the ways you can go out and finance those deals. The goal is to make you a well-rounded, fundamentally sound real estate investor so that when you find a deal, you can pick the funding that fits that deal and your financial situation the best. So that way, if you don't want to use money, cool, there's ways you can do that. If you want to use money, cool, there's ways you can do that too. But this will kind of show you how to piece those things together so you can be a fundamentally sound investor. You can find the book at biggerpockets.com/deals book, or you can grab it on Amazon. That's the best place. And if you want to connect with me, best place is on Instagram. I'm at the Henry Washington on Instagram. Just shoot me a DM, say hello, and we can send you the book link there too, or just there's tons of free information that I put out on Instagram that's super helpful. I just got a DM from a guy the other day that said, I watched one of your videos, one of the ways to find a deal, and I went and did it, and I just closed a wholesale deal from it and made 10 grand. So there's free information out there too that can help you.
Awesome. Henry, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.